Good morning. French authorities are investigating the death of a live streamer who died on camera after months of public abuse. I'm Remo, and this is the Daily Signal for August 22nd, 2025. Stay tuned for the rest of the stories.
Unfiltered. Now,
Here are the other top stories for August 22nd, 2025. Ukrainian public support for the war effort has collapsed. 69% now favor negotiated peace over military victory. President Trump intensifies sanctions threats against Russia while engaging European leaders on Ukraine's security plans. Russian forces gained 237 square miles of Ukrainian territory in the past month despite international support. Zelensky signals readiness for direct talks with Putin as war fatigue spreads across Ukraine. Trump expands metal tariffs to additional consumer products, escalating global trade tensions. U.S. and European national security advisors accelerate work on comprehensive Ukraine security framework. Military analysts report intense missile and drone attacks continue along multiple Ukrainian fronts. European military aid to Ukraine maintains strong levels through summer 2025 despite domestic pressures. Hungary's Orban emerges as key intermediary in U.S.-European-Ukraine strategy discussions. Now let's dive into each story. Breaking overnight, French prosecutors in Nice have launched a criminal investigation after live streamer Raphael Gravin died on camera following months of systematic abuse and humiliation. Gravin, known online as Jean Pormanov, died during a live stream on August 18th in southern France. The 22-year-old had become a controversial figure in what's called trash streaming, where viewers pay to humiliate performers. Prosecutors ordered an immediate autopsy to determine the exact cause of death. For months, Gravin had been subjected to degrading acts on the streaming platform Kick, which has far more lenient moderation policies than mainstream platforms. This case is highlighting the dark side of online entertainment. Politicians across France are now calling for stricter regulations on streaming platforms that allow this type of content. The investigation could set precedent for how authorities handle exploitation in the digital entertainment industry. Why this matters? This tragedy exposes the dangerous intersection of social media, financial desperation, and inadequate platform oversight that's affecting young people worldwide. A stunning reversal in Ukrainian public opinion. New polling shows 69% of Ukrainians now favor ending the war through negotiations rather than pursuing military victory. This is a complete flip from 2022, when most Ukrainians supported fighting until total victory. The shift reflects crushing war fatigue after more than 3 years of conflict that's devastated the country's economy and infrastructure. President Zelensky has responded to this pressure by signaling readiness for direct talks with Vladimir Putin, something he previously refused to consider. This dramatic change comes as Russian forces continue advancing, gaining 237 square miles of Ukrainian territory in just the past month. Here's the reality. Ukrainian society is exhausted. Millions have fled the country, cities remain under regular bombardment, and economic conditions continue deteriorating despite international aid. Why this matters? This shift in Ukrainian public opinion could fundamentally change the trajectory of the war and force Western allies to reconsider their long-term support strategies. President Trump is pursuing a two-pronged approach on Ukraine, intensifying sanctions threats against Russia while simultaneously expanding economic pressure through trade policy. Trump has expanded metal tariffs to additional consumer products, signaling growing trade tensions that are already impacting global markets. European leaders are concerned this could complicate coordinated responses to the Ukraine crisis. Meanwhile, Trump is engaging directly with European leaders, including Hungary's Viktor Orban, to consolidate Western backing for Ukraine while pushing toward peace negotiations. This represents a significant shift from previous American approaches to the conflict. The key detail: Trump is using economic leverage as his primary tool, threatening Russia with unprecedented sanctions while simultaneously pressuring allies through trade policy to align with his Ukraine strategy. Why this matters? This dual pressure approach could either accelerate peace negotiations or further destabilize international economic relationships at a critical moment. Despite diplomatic efforts, the military situation in Ukraine remains intense. Russian forces continue missile and drone attacks along multiple fronts while consolidating territorial gains. The 237 square miles of territory Russia captured in the past month represents a slight slowdown compared to earlier periods, but it demonstrates continued military pressure despite international sanctions and aid to Ukraine. European military aid remains strong through summer 2025, but there's growing concern about sustainability. Defense analysts worry that without a negotiated settlement soon, Ukraine's military position could deteriorate further. Here's what's happening. Russia is focusing on incremental gains rather than major offensives, grinding down Ukrainian resistance through sustained pressure rather than dramatic battlefield victories. Why this matters? The military stalemate is creating conditions where negotiated settlement looks increasingly attractive to war-weary Ukrainian civilians and cash-strapped Western allies. U.S. and European national security advisors are accelerating work on a comprehensive Ukraine security framework designed to provide long-term stability regardless of how the current conflict ends. This planning represents recognition that the current war will eventually end through negotiation, and post-conflict Ukraine will need robust security guarantees to prevent future Russian aggression. Hungary's Viktor Orban has emerged as a surprising key intermediary in these discussions, leveraging his relationships with both Trump and Putin to facilitate potential peace negotiations. Why this matters? These behind-the-scenes security discussions suggest major powers are actively preparing for a post-war scenario, indicating peace negotiations may be closer than publicly acknowledged. The combination of ongoing war, expanded tariffs, and sanctions threats is creating significant uncertainty in global markets. Trump's expansion of metal tariffs to consumer products is raising concerns about inflation, just as economies were stabilizing from previous trade disruptions. European officials are struggling to balance support for Ukraine with growing domestic economic pressures and the need to maintain trade relationships with the United States. Why this matters? Economic factors are increasingly driving political decisions about the war, potentially accelerating moves toward negotiated settlement to avoid further economic disruption. Looking across today's stories, we see a clear pattern. The Ukraine war is entering a new phase where political and economic realities are overtaking military considerations. The collapse in Ukrainian public support for continued fighting, combined with Trump's dual pressure strategy and accelerated security planning, suggests major powers are positioning for negotiated settlement rather than prolonged conflict. The broader theme, war fatigue, is becoming the dominant factor, not just in Ukraine, but among Western allies dealing with economic pressures and domestic political concerns about sustained military aid. Meanwhile, the French streamer tragedy reminds us that while geopolitical events dominate headlines, social media platforms continue creating dangerous environments for vulnerable young people worldwide. Looking ahead, these developments suggest we may be approaching an inflection point where military stalemate, economic pressure, and public opinion converge to create conditions for serious peace negotiations. The question isn't whether the war will end through negotiation, it's whether leaders can craft agreements that provide genuine security and stability for the region. That's your Daily Signal for August 22nd, 2025. I'm Remo. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you tomorrow with the latest developments from around the world.
Unfiltered.